Hey guys, time for another update on the GE810 restoration project. I have the cabinet all refinished. I've pretty well cleaned up the brass, just a bit more work to do on this top section. And I am going to take a gamble and try this Mohawk lacquer specially formulated for brass. I'll do this little decal first. My fear is that the old paint may raise when it gets hit by the solvent. So my plan is to do a real light coat, sort of as a primer, and then put on a couple more heavier coats. See how that goes shortly. And here is the rest of the cabinet. Came out quite nicely, I think. The Mohawk Van Dyke walnut, very nice color. And as for the front, that Rust-Oleum green apple paint turned out really nice as well. The original had a little bit more blue tinge to it, but heck, I think this looks really nice. I did successfully clean the old grill cloth. I sprayed on a little bit of carpet cleaner and then soaked it in some mild laundry detergent that was dye and perfume free. I just did it in the sink, and then I rinsed it out with some cool water and then let it slowly air dry. I think it did shrink a little bit, but it's not too bad. Now gluing it back down I think is going to be a bit of a challenge. I asked around online, I got a few suggestions. I think what I'll try doing is to use some Elmer's glue and just glue the left edge and the top, and then try to stretch it out, keep things even, and slowly work my way around it. Mainly this area seems to have shrunk because it doesn't quite reach all the way from here to the green like it should. But it's so delicate, I need to be very careful. Worst case scenario, I'll just have to replace it with something. Looks to me like burlap might be a pretty good match. But I'll certainly try to salvage this first. Now for the fun stuff. I've got the chassis just about done. And here it is. I've got all the paper caps replaced. It was fairly uneventful. I basically just snipped out the old and put in new. I used polyester Cornell Doublier, I believe it's pronounced. It's all these white guys in here. Here and there is a couple yellow jobbers, but they're the same type. And so one big guy here I used a Sprague orange drop capacitor. The power resistors that were bad I replaced with some metal oxide flame-proof resistors. And otherwise I tried to use carbon comp resistors like this guy and over here, which is what they used originally to kind of preserve the look. There's one oddball capacitor in here that is supposed to be a 0.06, which is an odd value to find, that had been replaced way back when by 0.05, which could account for the sink being so off, because that's what this is. This is the vertical sink circuit. So I shopped around on Mauser, and the closest I could find was a 0.062, but the only case style available was this little rectangular PC board mount. So I attached a couple leads and soldered it in. Doesn't look anything like the original did, but if it works, I can live with it. One other interesting thing I found was some odd resistor assemblies. In particular, this guy down in here. There are actually 5 resistors in series. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which, get this out of the way here, adding up to about 26.5K. On the schematic, oddly enough, they actually do show 3 resistors in series. 10K, 11K, and a 5.1. All I can figure is they were trying to add up to a value that wasn't commonly available at the time. Otherwise, I can't think of any reason not to just use a single resistor. And 5 is just crazy. It's tempting to just pull it out and put a 27K resistor in there. But these do measure okay, so I'm just going to leave them like they are for now. I've heard various theories. One is that there was a resistor shortage, at least for certain values, because there was a big boom in TVs in the late 40s, so they just used the best they could. It might also be, at least in high voltage circuits, to spread out the voltage across multiple resistors so they wouldn't arc out. Maybe to dissipate power, although that more commonly would be like this guy up here where there's two in parallel. And I suspect that's why they did that. Well, both to get an odd value and to dissipate more power, because that is on the horizontal output, which does have a bit of current going through it. One bad thing I found, which may cause some problems, is this dual control here for horizontal and vertical. The outer control works okay, but the inner shaft just rotates around and around and around. And the shaft was bent a bit, like it had gotten whacked at some point. I bent it back so it rotates freely, but I suspect inside this dual rheostat, the stop probably broke off. I'll see how it works, but I may have to remove this entire thing, pry open the cover and try to do some surgery or even replace the whole unit. These things are really, really hard to find though. Concentric controls with a long shaft like this. Best place to get one is out of scrap one out of another chassis. Speaking of which, I asked around online and I was very lucky and got a high voltage cover from a scrap GE 810 chassis, so it's exactly the right high voltage shield for this. And I believe I paid a grand total of nothing for it. A lot of the guys in the vintage TV community are very nice, and they will gladly donate a part to help you complete your project. At least that's been my finding. Now, the last thing I have left to do is replace the electrolytics, which is what all these wires are with these little tags here, so I know how to reconnect them. I did manage to unmount these 3-can capacitors, remove the old insides, and put the new Nichicon caps inside. I've remounted them, and now the fun part, I have to hook them back up. These two on the right are 4-section caps, so there are quite a few wires going to them. What I did when I unwired them is I very carefully put a sticky tag on every single wire with the symbol so I would know where it would go. For instance, it's L for the lower capacitor and a little half circle, so I know that it goes to the half circle terminal, which is this one in the upper right here. I know that because I'm in a diagram here, so upper left, no symbol, upper right, half circle, lower right square, lower left triangle. And you'll see that I have symbols like there's the lower triangle. So I have to hook all these wires back up and not make a single mistake. And once I get that done, a final inspection, and then I'm going to try powering the setup. It took a while, but I've got all the wires soldered back on, and I do believe they're all in the right place. So now it's time for my absolute least favorite part of this hobby, which is to power this set back up. I still have not replaced the rotted out old power connector back here, but I did ask around online, and I think I'll be getting one in the mail shortly. In the meantime, I'm going to do what I did before, which is to take the leads that would have gone to that connector, stick them through this hole here, and hardwire it to a power plug. Like before, I'm going to remove the horizontal output tube. Actually, I already have. That's what this connector would have gone to. What that'll do is disable the high voltage section while I just make sure that I can power this set back up. You know, that I didn't make any major mistakes. I'll flip the chassis down, hook it up to my Variac, and keep my fingers crossed. Okay, I flipped the chassis down. I removed the high voltage shield so I could see what's going on in this area better. I put a tube extender on the main rectifier tube here so I could clip a meter lead to it so I can monitor the voltage as I power this up. Got my little 5-inch test tube here, but again the high voltage section is disabled, so don't expect to see a picture. Here's the caps. While I had them out, I took the liberty of shining them up so they look rather nice. The rest of the chassis, believe it or not, I actually did spend some time cleaning it up, but it still has a ways to go. This set was really, really filthy. Still missing some knobs, but I did win some on an eBay auction, and hopefully they'll be here in a week or so. I don't like to think about how much I spent on them, but I'm actually going to get more knobs than I need, so I'll just turn around and sell the excess knobs, and maybe it won't be quite so painful. They really don't show up too often, so when I saw them, I just had to pounce on the auction. Alright, so here we go. Got the set turned on here. One of the knobs I'm missing is the power volume here, and this gizmo's the focus, I believe. So I got this turned on. I'm going to turn on my Variac. It's turned down to 0. So, didn't expect much to happen yet. I'll slowly increase it. Well, that's a good sign. So I've only got this at about 35 volts AC, but even that is enough to get the tubes to conduct. Can't really see the filament glowing now with this low voltage. Yeah, I guess I can a little bit. Get the camera light off here. Barely glowing. Turn it back on so I can see what I'm doing. Nothing smoking so far. Let's see, about 135 volts. No signs of life out of the speaker yet. About 50% power now. So hum coming out of the speaker now. 300 volts, the main B+ supply. Changing the channel right now. Don't have a signal source hooked up, but I figured I might be able to pick up that low power local station even without an antenna hooked up, like I did in my earlier video. A little bit of juice. Alright. How about that? Assume that's channel 6, like I had playing before. Let's see if I count. It's channel 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. I'll hook up an antenna and should sound a lot better. I hope.